MT, Mohamed Ismail, or Ismail, that's your name. I know you as MT, and I think everyone can call you MT. You're an industrial designer with a knack for creative direction. You have a background in marketing and you work in interior design and have done different things. And today I'd like to talk to you about something that is really dear to your heart and that you do, which is trend analysis and CMF, only because today with what's happening in the world, people are working from home. There's a shift or like a paradigm shift in the way people are working, relating to each other and so on. So just before we dive into trends, what is CMF? Can you just explain what it is? Because there are many people out there who don't know what it means, and it's huge in many industries, as interior design, even like digital, physical manufacturing. So what is it?
Okay, first, hi Maria. Thank you so much for this introduction. Super happy to be here and super excited to be talking about CMF design and trends. So to answer your first question, CMF design refers to the colors, materials, and finishes design. So in a way, it's responsible for the tactile and emotional experience of a product or a space or a service. Meaning, when I look at something, the way it feels, whether by touch or the way it feels emotionally or psychologically, CMF is in a very big part responsible for that.
All right. Can you give an example? Because I know you've done quite a bit of work in trends research and forecasting, and focusing as well on CMF in a certain way. Can you give an example like of the process you undertake? Just pick any kind of project, whether it's spaces or a physical product, and just tell us how do you get started? What do you think about? What comes to your mind?
Okay, so especially when it comes to a brand, you have to be very aware of two things. You have to be very aware of the brand and brand identity, the target market, the persona, and the market it operates in. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you have to match that with the current, trendscape or what's going to happen, and what you have to, nitpick, like what's going to affect that brand or what's going to matter to its consumers. So, for example, let's take a couple of years back, I worked on a project of actual vases, plant pots, for a brand that was operating in Switzerland and Italy. And we were working to launch their collection for 2020, all right? Using trend forecasting to actually to decide which shapes are actually going to work, but at the same time with a very big focus on their colors and finishes. We're not changing the materials. They're using plastics. We're not changing the material or the production processes. We were just, playing around with the colors and finishes. So for that brand, for that specific brand, we had to first take a look at their collection, which is first step is always to do some type of a historical analysis of a brand, all right? And you have to also, second step, you have to look at their competitors, because you have to understand, okay, where do they stand in the market? What colors are their competitors using for which markets? After that, you have to start going on to, okay, what are the current trends in the market or where the market is going? What are the living trends? So we start to analyze like the outdoor trends, the indoor trends, and how could that actually affect, our designs. After all of that, we had to start looking, because since we were operating in two very different markets, Switzerland and Italy, Switzerland with a lot of clean lines, a lot of brutalism actually as well. And then Italy, which is a warm Mediterranean country for the most part. So very, very different. So when we had to create their collection, we had to eliminate, they came to us with around, I think, 40 colors. And we had to, in the end, we had 9 colors, but actually we probably kept 2 or 3 only of the initial 40, because a lot of them were not even fit either to the market or to the time that they are operating in. So our process, you have to understand the brand, understand the market, the other competitors, and then see what's going on in the trends and how people are living and how to express that in your product to make it go with what is actually going to work. And after that, of course, we have to go into prototyping and manufacturing. And then 2 years later, we launched. And actually, earlier this year, pre-COVID, Pantone released their report for 2020 and 2021, which is not trend forecasting, which is okay, what is exactly happening right now, and these products actually matched perfectly with them. So that for me, like, was a big success when it comes to trend forecasting in colors, of course.
Oh, that's brilliant, actually, and it. Obviously it's part of the design process anyway, because you have to look at every aspect before you jump into conclusions and decisions and see what's going to happen and what could eventually happen. So there's lots of things that go. So I'm sure you kind of enjoy the process of doing that. And I guess for spaces as well, it's kind of, I wouldn't say the same thing, but it's what you need to look out for, watch out for. And what have you been noticing, or what are you working on something specific in terms of, working from home, or what do you think is going to happen in that sense? Because we do need, even if we talk about the color of the wall, it's not just a simple or plain white. Some other colors or even textures can affect the mood and the productivity of people. Is it something you explore? Is it something you're interested in as well?
Yes, we have to, like you said so much right now, we're gonna have to unpack that a bit. Um, so when it comes to spaces, it's very, very important. And we're gonna talk a little bit about spaces before I move into the whole COVID and working from home part. So when it comes to spaces, there is a very big part where people don't understand that we don't change spaces as fast as we change our phones, our cups, or our clothes. So sure, you might be crazy about this, shade of purple right now, or pink, or red, but it doesn't mean that you should just, paint everything with it, because you're going to have to live with that for the most part. Not everyone is able to change. And it's not just about the money, because it's actually a very big hassle to change paint colors and time and all of that.
Absolutely.
A very big part of that has to do with something that we really ignore in general. A lot of architects and designers ignore, which is the psychological and physiological effects of color on people. And there are actually studies published that it does not matter if you can see or if you're blind, it still has the same effects.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually a study made on blind people, and red still raised their heart rate. So it really, did it really matter at all if they can see it or not, because they have their energy or they have the vibration. So a very big part has to do with which colors are, appropriate for which areas and which usages.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the projects I've worked on for, in collaboration with Francesca Valan for Leclerc, which is a paint company in Europe. One of the many projects we've worked together on, but for them was one for interiors and for mapping the new trends for this decade for the paint colors. And we really had to work on two things. We had to go on the part of, okay, what's going to be trendy? What are people going to be into? Because of the changes in the environment, changes in the climate, changes in the economy. All of these things actually affect colors and color choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to get on about that, about COVID in a bit, actually. So all of these things affect that. And at the same time, just because these colors are going to be trendy doesn't mean you can use them in all the rooms. For certain rooms, for example, bedrooms, we have to choose. You cannot be choosing this color, for example, this white right behind me, even though you can use it for a bedroom. But most of the time, you would need to tone it down a bit, because you need to relax in that space, especially if it's just a space made for sleeping. Some people spend a lot of time in their bedrooms, and then it makes it different,
Mm-hmm.
If you're spending time, if you have because right now we have a lot of open spaces, a lot of multifunctional spaces. So we've also even created like a full, collection or a guide for that. Because for multifunctional spaces, you're going to have to use, colors that really go well together. And you might be using accents just to divide between spaces, or to, to create partitions, or to mark areas, or to even accessorize. And that is something that people have not really cared about a lot, even though it was a growing trend since the early 2000s, the open spaces, open living, especially at homes. But now it has evolved and it has gotten even, more fully blown. And that brings us to work during COVID, or working from home, and actually the colors and materials and finishes. But we're going to have to take a bit into that, which is the interior design. We're going to have to agree that most of our spaces were not built around that full functionality of us staying in them 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, especially during the first few months of this pandemic, A lot of people really suffered, and we're trying to, okay, buy pieces that accommodate them and all of that. So the other part regarding that, when you talk about colors or materials, especially we're going to have to focus on materials as well, you need things that work for you. Most of the time, and especially for interior spaces, that's very different from one person to the other. But you really have to understand that you need materials that work for you. You need materials, for example, that can actually sustain, that are breathable, that can sustain the dirt, that can be clean, that can be comfortable to sit on. You need, for example, a countertop where it might not be super cold, so you can use it in the winter if you're going to end up working from home a lot.
I'm going to interrupt you here because I have also a background in interior design, and I think more than 10 years ago, it wasn't something we would come across frequently. The way I came across CMF was reading job descriptions on Dezeen.com and stuff. This is how I discovered what CMF is. It's another world. It's a huge world, and it makes a big difference. So I'm glad we're having this conversation actually, because CMF designers are also, or CMF consultants are, it's like they're like species in extinction. You don't find them that often. So I think there's huge possibilities as well to work with different brands and different people to help them feel better. So yeah, just keep going on that.
No, I'm very happy actually that you said that, because, as I started doing this, when I started actually being focused on it, I did not realize that I was doing it.
Okay.
Like, until I moved to Milan 5 years ago, started doing my master's, and I realized that there is actually a topic called CMF. And then I realized that I've always focused on that, and I've always really made a very big focus on it. Even, in my master's applications, I wrote a whole paragraph about how I believe that materials and colors should be dealt with and all of that. But then I ended up being taught and worked with for a few years with like one of the industry leaders, Francesca. So that really, got me in the heart of it. And I got to work on a lot of projects, as you say, that it has a lot of applications. I got to work on projects from paint collections, literally paint collections for homes, for the industry, even for woods and fabric, plastics for the glasses. I consulted on things like that, for the plastics for glasses. Worked on even full interiors of a speedboat or a yacht, to furniture, the home accessories. So it has a lot of applications. And that's really the big problem. Like, not the big problem, the big opportunity here is that all of these things have the opportunity to elevate people's lives. It has the opportunity to make you feel better in your space or with the product that you're using. And that is something that people need to start really focusing on, especially with what the COVID has brought.
Yeah.
That fast forward that it has pressed. It really is moving us much faster towards what we as trend forecasters or trend analysts we're seeing coming into fruition by 2030, which is brands must have value and brands must offer value. They have to have purpose and they have to be authentic. So it's no longer about, okay, let's get that trendy color so we can sell better. No, selling better is actually a byproduct, even though it's what you want, but it's a byproduct of you making people feel good or giving them something that adds to their life or elevates them. So CMF is definitely a big part of that. And actually, that color on its own accounts to more than 60% of your buying decision as a consumer. So, so it's really crazy. If you go into a store, something is in a bad color, you're not even going to go towards it to see what it is, no matter how interesting it looks. So, all right.
Interesting. And my last, I think, just a question would be about trends analysis and forecasting, because this is something you do as well, which is something you mentioned anyway, because it's part of the process. How do you go about that, and how do you determine, or how does that support you in your choices for different projects?
Okay. Let's answer that last question first, how it supports. So in a big way, it really dictates the work that you do, because it tells you where to go. It tells you, okay, that's a destination that you need to arrive at. So you need to start figuring out your journey. You need to figure out the consumer journey, how they're going to deal with this product and what you need to provide for them. A very big distinction that brands need to have or need to make for their, for the development when it comes to product development or the CMF development, both of them, By product, I mean the form, the functionality.
Yep.
So for both parts, you have to differentiate between a trend and a style, because some brands do not always follow trends, or at least don't follow them in the most apparent way.
Okay.
Because as we've gone even through crazy pop color, phases and crazy neon phases, you don't see all brands imitating that. But you see brands, yes. So you see brands,
bookmarkers, yeah.
Exactly. So that's for you to find them very, very functional. See? So you see brands understanding and taking the notion behind it, which is, for example, that is the need for digital, the need for something that's fast. And then they can start applying it in ways that go for their DNA.
Okay.
I know that sounds very up in the air, so I'm going to bring it, back down to very specifics. Today, as a brand, let's say if you're Apple, okay. For example, tell me something. If I ask you about an Apple product, what are the materials what is the, just give me a keyword that you feel when it comes to their materials or colors.
I think of the glass, the surface, the touch.
Okay.
Anything else? I would talk about the trackpad. I don't know what is the material there. Aluminum, kind of.
Okay. So for you, if you think about the product for like that, for example, you think it's luxurious, it's clean, it's these are more keywords. Would you would say that about them?
Yeah.
So,
no, I thought you were asking me about specific material.
About the specific, yeah. No, it was my bad, honestly, for
I think minimalistic. I think it served the purpose in the sense that it's all integrated. It's meaning if you have all the Apple products, you don't need to. It's just simple. It's just fluid in its usability. So that's why I use them.
Exactly, and that's why most designers prefer them because of that. Because you're actually paying for that. You're paying for that user experience.
Absolutely.
Okay? And that user experience for them, it flows from inside, their software, their hardware, to the outside of their objects. And that's why you.
By the way, I unmounted my old Mac once because I wanted to replace the RAMs, and it was so clean. It's like on the outside. So I was so impressed that I opened my laptop, my PC laptop. I'm not going to give the brand, but you can think that they're all the same. And it was like dumping things into it, and that's a big difference. It makes a big difference because it's inside and outside. It's the same. It's as clean, as neat, as organized as you're like, wow. Oh,
it is.
Yeah.
It is. And that's something, by the way, for brands we're no longer about brands surviving. I really want to promote a feeling of brands and companies thriving, because that's what people should do. If you're offering value, you should always thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So your internal and external, internal culture should always flow to the outside. Mm-hmm. And the culture that you're promoting to the outside should always be inside. And that is through your products. It means that you're also going to be having to deal this way with your people and your design processes as well. I'm always very impressed when I go to factories where actually they have clean production lines. You don't know how rare it is.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Whether in Europe or in the Middle East, I've been to many factories, and it's very rare to find clean production lines. Even though the products from the outside, they're luxury products, they're amazing, but then, so it's a very big part.
So going back to trends, you were saying that, let's say you have any product, and you gave the example of Apple, it can be anything. This is when you talk about the brand values and everything else that falls in line with what you try to do and in your trend forecasting and choices after in the product. So this is why you need to understand everything grounded and then go there and make a decision and get started with the production or whatever it may be.
Yes, you need to definitely understand. The thing is, for trends, most designers just look at it from, okay, which color is trendy right now, which interface type is trendy right now, which is fine. But that's also why trend consultants actually exist, because as someone who works with trends, specifically with trends, you have to understand also the economies at scale. You have to understand the cultural values. You have to understand a lot of other industries that are actually adjacent, but really do have an effect either on you directly or on your consumer. Because what happens to you as a consumer will affect how you buy another brand or how you buy another product. So for example, something that we're gonna be dealing with and we're gonna be reading about in a few months is what's happening on Christmas and this year's sales and this year's products. Because what happened with COVID, a lot of people will be spending a lot less, and a lot of people will not be flying. A lot of people will not be spending time with family. You're gonna see a rise to small gatherings. You're gonna see a rise to, like things like Friendsgiving, actually, instead of Thanksgiving, for example, because you're gonna have people, if you live in a certain city away from your family, you are going to gather with your close friends.
Yes.
So all of these are also going to, all of these things that we look at as trends, they give way to new product entries and new product, new product design. Like, for example, now you have all these masks that are made by very big brands. Even Celetti has masks right now.
Yeah.
So fashion brands have masks right now. So, it's always about that. So you just have to keep looking at what might affect your business. And most of the time you can reach out to a trend consultant to ask them, or to basically tell them, okay, this is my offering, this is my goal, where am I, or what can I do? What do you think I should be doing with my process or with my products? And I hope that answered.
Yeah. That's very cool. And I had some friends working in agencies that are only focusing on trend forecasting. So it's a big thing today. So yeah, thank you so much for that. That was a very interesting conversation, and looking forward to, more.
No, really, thank you so much for this conversation. It was quite exciting. And I believe that we really covered, some very interesting topics.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, really.
Well, we went even over and beyond, so above and beyond what we want to do. Yeah. So that's really, really cool. And I'm gonna just post your website, LinkedIn, Instagram, any other links.
Instagram,
I'm gonna be posting them down in the description. And thank you so much, MT.
Thank you so much. Have an amazing day, and looking forward to more.